7 years or longer.
Oh, longer than that.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
But I know her from the Ministry of Testing stuff, of course. And Claire's been a tester for about, well, she was a tester for about 15 years, and she's moved to engineering management. And this is a topic I'm really passionate about because it's also my journey, so I'm really excited to hear from Claire. And yeah, I hope you enjoy.
Hi, am I good to go? Yes, big thumbs up from the back. Yes, it's so wonderful to be back in Leeds. I've not been to one of these since about 2018, and I used to come when they did them twice a year, and it's so good to be back. I love this event, it's fantastic. I will warn you, I am running on about 3 hours sleep. As my child and my dog, I'm fully blaming them, so I'm quite sort of jittery. I can't guarantee I won't fall asleep during my talk, but you know, just throw something at me or something if that happens. But yeah, so I'm here to talk about my kind of path from being a tester to an engineering manager, and why I think testers have some great skills and qualities that they can bring to the engineering management role. So if it's something that you may be considering, or that something you maybe haven't considered before, then it might be of interest to you. So who am I? Well, as Gwen just said, I'm an engineering manager at Moneysupermarket. I am based in Manchester, just over the hills, so it's a lovely journey here this morning. And I've been there for just, I think it was like 5 years, kind of this week actually. And I started off there as a test lead before moving into my current role. I did a whole bunch of years in QA, so I was tested for about 15 years, and prior to that, I did a few years in sort of network admin, software support, infrastructure-y type roles where, you know, pre-kind of cloud infrastructure days, where it was kind of all physical server rooms and spaghetti junction cabling and things like that. So, and if you've seen me speak before, it might have been on imposter syndrome, which is something I spoke about at Test Bash a few years ago, and I've done it at a few conferences since. And this isn't about that, but I might touch on it a bit later. I'm going to have to use this hand. I think in my experience, because obviously your experience may be different, it kind of feels like not so long ago, the career path for testers was somewhat more kind of obvious and linear, in that you might go from a sort of a junior role through that kind of mid-level into a senior role, then perhaps lead or principal if that was available, and then maybe to a kind of test manager role or head of test. But these days, it doesn't feel as clear. A lot of places don't have test manager roles or heads of testing anymore. They might have got rid of those roles. I know the company that I work at did. We don't have that anymore. And so it can be difficult as a tester to think, you know, when you get to maybe a senior level, you think, what direction do I want to go in? What do I want to do next? I think that the engineering manager role can be something that testers can bring a lot of value to. So if it's something you're interested in, hopefully this will be helpful. Just a bit of background on me. I was always very reluctant to get into management. In my previous company, I was kind of, my manager would talk to me about, would you like to try being a line manager? Would you like to try taking on some of that responsibility? And I was always very reluctant to. Even though I was sort of in my mid-30s at the time, I still felt, not mature enough and not responsible enough to be looking after other people's careers, when I felt that I could barely look after my own. And I felt that I didn't have the sort of emotional awareness and emotional maturity to take that role on and kind of help support other people. And I wanted to retain that sort of individual contributor title. I wasn't interested in kind of being a manager, and I was fairly confident I wanted to carry on in the direction I was moving in. And the sort of the weight and the pressure of responsibility of looking after other people, I just felt that wasn't really for me. I also didn't want to conform to that very outdated stereotype of woman in tech moves into management role, isn't technical anymore. Because I'd spent a really long time building up all my technical skills over the years, a lot of self-taught or on-the-job skills, and I didn't want to kind of throw that all away and move into the sort of a role where I wasn't using that anymore, and yeah, it just felt like, it wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. And it quite annoys, even though it is an outdated stereotype, it's something you still see and hear a lot of. I've been to events recently, and this really annoys me, where you kind of hear we want to get more women into tech, but there are loads of non-technical roles available that you can move into. And yeah, it's definitely still a message that's being communicated, and I felt like I'd been kind of letting the side down moving into that role, and I want to kind of, I enjoyed the tech stuff and wanted to kind of keep moving in that direction. And sorry if you're offended by swearing, by the way, but I would think coming to this event with Gwen, you probably wouldn't be offended by swearing. But in my previous company, to Moneysupermarket, I got a little bit of an opportunity to get a sort of taster of line management. So we had some university placement students come in. And even though my manager had been pestering me to kind of take on line management responsibility, he said, okay, you don't want to do that, so why don't you have a go at just looking after these placement students? They're with us for a finite amount of time. And obviously I don't have to do masses of career support with them, but kind of looking after them while they're here, making sure that they are able to get some good experience of the tech stack we use, of the different teams, and the different ways of working, and just get a really good kind of grounding in what it's like to work as a tester in a team. Neither of them actually really wanted to be testers, as I found out whilst they were with us, but they were both fantastic people, very, very talented, and it was a real kind of pleasure to support them while they were with us, and in from a sort of a coaching and mentoring perspective. And actually I started to think, maybe it's not quite so bad after all. And when I moved on from that company, I then kind of decided, an opportunity came up for a test lead role at Moneysupermarket, and so I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? I might really enjoy it. And so I started there in 2018, and actually really enjoyed supporting the people that I was looking after. And again, it wasn't a massive number of people, about 5 or 6, and it didn't feel too onerous. But I think having that sort of initial taster in an environment where it felt kind of safe to fail. Obviously, I didn't want to fail the students, but I wanted to, it was something where if I could give it a go, and if I didn't enjoy it, then I could go, well, that's fine, it's not for me, and I don't have to do that. And I think that was a really important part of getting me started on this path. So now in 2019, I went off on maternity leave and I had a baby, and then I came back to work in February 2020 for about 6 weeks until we went into lockdown, and then I was back home with a baby and trying to work as well, and obviously lots of us were in similar situations and coping with really difficult things going on. And during that time, I kind of had started kind of thinking, had a lot of time to think because we weren't doing a lot of anything else. About what I wanted to do and what might be next for me. And I've been in testing quite a long time, and I was like, do I want to stay in testing? Do I want to do something else? And I started to think about what are the things that I really enjoy about my job. I really enjoy the people support side of things. I enjoy working with people and helping them towards promotions and developing their careers and supporting the teams and doing all that kind of thing. And the technical stuff, I was kind of like, well, it's fine, but I'd kind of I don't know whether it was having been off on maternity for ages or just changing how I felt about things, but I didn't feel that same passion for kind of, doing as much of the hands-on technical stuff. But I really, really loved supporting the teams and the people, so I was kind of thinking, well, what can I do? We have no head of test, we have no test managers, so what do I do next? Do I start looking for a job somewhere else? And around that time, Moneysupermarket, by massive coincidence, announced that they were going to introduce this engineering manager role, which was a completely new function and hadn't existed before, and sort of my ears pricked up and this sounded kind of interesting, but what was the purpose of this and what was it about? So the reason they were introducing the engineering manager role at Moneysupermarket was, our test leads and tech leads were very, very stretched. They were doing a lot of line management, and they were also helping kind of drive the technical direction as well. And as a result of this, a lot of our engineers were having a massively inconsistent experience in terms of the support that they were getting. Some people had one-to-ones regularly and had goals and objectives and, you know, were kind of confident about what they needed to do to progress. Other people hadn't had a one-to-one in months, had no objectives and no idea how to progress at all. And there was a general perception that you can't get promoted, it's really difficult to know what you need to do. And yeah, so there was just a massively inconsistent experience across tech. So they wanted to enable engineers to get a really great level of support, have a long-lasting experience, a long-lasting relationship with their manager. And also, they wanted the EMs to enable the teams, so help coach them in sort of great ways of working and helping them deliver at pace and think about things like, you know, are they measuring the right things? Do they know the value in the work that they're doing? And also break down silos. We also had a massive problem where we had a bunch of teams that had all been given this autonomy to work in the way they wanted. So they'd all built their channels in completely different ways, using different tools, different tech stacks. If we needed to move people around, it was really hard because everybody was using different things. There was very little consistency across the team. So when business priorities changed, we couldn't put people where we needed to. We couldn't spin teams up quickly. We couldn't, you know, we couldn't quickly deal with anything that came up, and so it was one of the they wanted the engineering managers to help deal with that. Of course, as is expected, I felt woefully underqualified to do this role, but I had a lot of encouragement from my manager at the time, who I'll talk about later, and applied for it and sort of got the job anyway. But I had massive concerns about how do I, as a tester, support developers when I've never been one. And would they think that I could support them? And I'm going to lose those technical skills that I do have. But I applied and got the job anyway. And there were a number of us from the team that did apply. There was myself, a couple of developers, somebody who was already in a management role. So we were from different backgrounds, which was really useful coming into that and building that team. So what were our priorities as we started to build this new function? We had to just start from scratch because this function didn't exist. We had to work out how we work together, how we interact with each other, how we interact with individuals in the team, how we interact with the teams themselves, how we work with senior management and senior leadership, and you know, how do we work together? How do we build this function? We had to start supporting engineers with their careers. So how do we approach promotions? It had always been a bit sort of wishy-washy in the past and wasn't very clear, and we needed to sort all that out, and you know, to help us hang on to really good people, make sure that they had a path within the company. Recruitment and onboarding. Our recruitment processes were all over the place. Different teams interviewed in different ways, and there was, you know, there were some really good hires and some really bad hires, and when people came into the company, there was just a really inconsistent experience. They, you know, they didn't get a great introduction to the company. Some people left a month after starting because they thought it was terrible. So we needed to do all that as well and overhaul all that. And we needed to build really good teams, making sure people were in the right places, and if they wanted to move teams, have the opportunity to do that. If they wanted to develop new skills, can we facilitate that somehow? Supporting delivery. So are we delivering for our customers? Are we building the right solutions? Are we helping unblock our teams? And you know, just making sure that the work that we wanted to do, that the teams were able to deliver on. And things like community. Now, during COVID, I mean, I know a lot of companies did a fantastic job of keeping their communities together and doing online, you know, remote events, but our community at Moneysupermarket really, really struggled, and it wasn't, you know, it sort of fell apart a bit and everyone was very siloed and very separate during COVID, and we wanted to help we needed to help rebuild that. Rebuild our internal community as well as our relationships with the external community. We weren't great at getting out to events and speaking and things like that. There's still work we need to do there. We're still not great at it, as you know, but we're getting better. And things like apprentices. We've recently taken on a few software development apprentices in both our Manchester and London offices, so I've been helping to support the assessment days and recruitment of those apprentices, and I'll be supporting them as they go through their time with us, which is really, really exciting, helping bring new people into the industry. All women as well that we've recruited, which is absolutely fantastic. And so, having reflected on some of the things over the last kind of 18 months to 2 years that I've been in this role, thinking about the things that testers, the skills that we have that we can bring to this role, building relationships. I've worked in some really tricky teams over the years. I don't know about you as testers, but I've worked in teams where developers are a bit spiky and don't really want to be told that something's wrong, and testers are the bearers of bad news often, and we kind of have to make our peace with that. And product owners don't want to be told that maybe they shouldn't go out the door. And sometimes I've worked with testers who get really angry when they find a bug, and I've still not been able to work out why that is. But being able to, maybe they're in the wrong job, I don't know. But, being able to build those relationships with people to help you deal with these tricky situations. And that can be quite difficult. And, dealing with different people in different contexts, being assertive enough to sort of express your views or ask those questions and kind of deliver the bad news, building connections with your team, outside your team as well. As testers, we know that our teams rarely operate in isolation. We often impact other people impact us and the work that we do, and also being able to support those individuals on our team, as well as work with individuals outside our team. So, and that experience in sort of building different relationships with different people with different temperaments I found kind of really useful moving into this role, and having to build relationships with the people that I work with, rebuild relationships with people that I already worked with, and and build relationships with more senior people that I've never had exposure to before as well. Asking all the questions, we're very good at that. And, asking those awkward questions, what happens if I do this? And what happens if I don't do this? What happens if, what problem are we trying to solve? What's the value in what we're doing here? And those clarifying questions. So if I understand this correctly, then, which can often draw out a lot of, issues and things. And then asking myself how I can unblock the team as well, and being kind of, assertive enough to ask those questions. And a lot of what I do as an engineering manager is just sit there and ask questions, and I don't necessarily know the answers, and I make peace with not knowing everything, but being able to kind of help the team ask themselves questions to find the answers that they need and help unblock them and move in the direction that they want. And as testers, this is a big thing that we do. Knowing what good looks like. So as testers, we don't just find bugs in the software. That's only part of our job. Building quality software is also about having great working practices and quality processes. And I know there's a lot of talk about kind of quality engineering and shifting left and shifting right and using kind of agile ways of working. And not everyone has a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, and so testers can really bring loads and loads of value. And in some of the teams I've worked with, in very small teams in small companies over the years, done quite a lot of this, kind of knowing what good looks like in terms of how the team works, but also what good looks like for our software. Are we measuring the right things? Do we know what good looks like at 9:30 a.m. on a Wednesday for our the app that we have? Do we know when something's wrong with it? Do we know when when everything looks right? So kind of that sort of what good looks like, and that sort of quality processes has kind of really stood me in good stead, I think, in my EM role as well. And the breadth and depth of technical knowledge as well. So I've worked in a whole bunch of teams over the years. I've worked in tech stacks involving sort of Delphi and VB and .NET and some random proprietary language that some developer has invented. I've worked in a few of those. That's always fun. And it's, especially if you maybe working things like consulting or contracting or freelancing, you get used to sort of adapting to all these different environments. And I'm not saying developers don't, but as testers, we move around, we'll possibly move around even more between these different tech stacks and different teams, and knowing how to adapt to that, to those that different tech and different tooling, and not necessarily having to be an expert in it, but being able to work with it, being able to ask the questions, being able to dive in and have a go. And I think that has really, really helped as well. I've moved from being an EM in the mobile team to being in a web team, and recently I've moved into a platform engineering team. And as I said, my infrastructure knowledge is about 20 years old, and I am now having to learn a whole load of new stuff around AWS and cloud services and all this kind of thing. But I feel, having moved around all the different teams I've worked in testing, that I feel kind of confident that I can do it. And yeah, I think I don't necessarily know, if I hadn't been a tester, I don't know that I would have felt like that. So thinking about some of the lessons and the challenges, the support network, this is one of the things that has been most valuable to me starting as an engineering manager. Having a manager who supports you. I've probably had about 3 different managers in the time I've been an engineering manager, but all of them have been fantastically supportive, first in encouraging me to go for the role, expecting me to make mistakes, expecting me to fail, but supporting me and encouraging me and providing guidance and things like that. The engineering manager collective we have at Moneysupermarket, I feel really privileged to work with these people. We're a massive support to one another, people to bounce ideas off, to grab as a sounding board when something's going wrong, or just talk through a really hard situation with. Having that support and that community within a community has been absolutely fantastic. So if you kind of going to move into this or any new role, that, you know, understanding who your support network are has been, you know, it's absolutely invaluable. External community, I've reached out to people who've made a similar move from other companies, and I catch up with them regularly, and we kind of share experiences and ideas, and that's so helpful as well. So if you know, there doesn't seem to be an EM community in the same way there is a fantastic test community. Gwen's like nodding, but yeah, it's kind of, there doesn't seem to be that kind of thing, and that's why kind of I love the testing community, but it doesn't seem to have that for engineering managers. So being able to kind of have those connections has really helped. And other teams as well, other teams within our business, people like people team and the finance team, and people who really impact and can support the work that we do. I think that, you know, making those connections and building those bonds with people has been, you know, an amazing support and amazing help in some of the kind of situations that we deal with. Knowing that I can't do it all, I am a horror for over-committing myself and volunteering for things that are shiny and new and going, oh, that looks exciting, I want to do that. And but up until recently, I was working 4 days a week, which I've been doing since I came back off maternity. I'm also been doing a management qualification for the last 2 years. Essentially working 3.5 days a week. I'm managing 17 people and trying to do a load of other stuff. And it's got a bit difficult at times. And I've had to kind of start protecting my time and pushing back on things and saying no. And haven't done masses of stuff in the community over the last couple of years because of all this other stuff that's been going on. But realising that I've got to, you know, I can't do everything. I can't be hands-on with the tech and support the people and support the teams and do all the things I need to do, and coming to a sort of level of acceptance that I need to do the things that are really important. And not having all the answers. So the people that I work with are very, you know, people that I support are really talented. They have fantastic technical skills, and I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs. They are, you know, I'm not there to teach them to be better engineers, better developers, better testers. I'm there to help support them, facilitate the opportunities for them, and, you know, help them find, you know, help the teams find a way to deliver. Obviously give advice and guidance where I can, but yeah, it's definitely not a sort of a teaching role. I'm not going to sit there and tell a tech lead how to be a better developer, but I can really help support with a lot of the behaviour side of things, and, you know, how we can still have those technical conversations. But a lot of the work that we seem to do as engineering managers is around supporting those really good behaviours and getting people, sometimes just getting people to talk to one another, which it seems to be one of the main problems. And getting good with feedback as well. Getting feedback to, you know, for myself, for how I'm doing. So people want to say, you're doing a job, and, you know, I want something from you I'm not getting, or helping us give and get feedback on people that we're supporting. I've managed people who work in teams that I am not working with day to day, so working with the other engineering managers to get feedback and give feedback on them, because we had a bit of a matrix approach. Also using, if we've had to go through any kind of performance situations where there's kind of slightly more tricky scenarios, it's, using feedback to get to resolve those kind of situations as well. So I think they're the sort of main lessons that I've learned, main challenges that I've had. So in terms of highlights, not feeling like an imposter as much, which is weird. I kind of thought about the last couple of years and how I'd felt about things. And even though I spoke about imposter syndrome so much, I realized I hadn't really felt like that. And I'm not saying that I think I'm an amazing engineering manager, because I've still got loads to learn and a really long way to go. And, I'm kind of looking forward to developing and growing in that role. But I think that having had, being part of that internal sort of community, that part of that EM collective where we're all starting from scratch, we're all learning at the same time. None of us had done this role before. And we were all sort of building it together. I realised that, I didn't feel that imposter syndrome. And it's provided new opportunities. Like I said, I've been able to move into platform engineering, which is really exciting, place to be. And I'm really looking forward to, I've been doing it for 5 weeks now. Definitely not an expert, but really looking forward to kind of working with that team, amazing people in there. Being able to support awesome people. I've been able to work with people to get promotions, whether that's to senior dev, senior QA, QA lead, tech lead, whatever. And it's so rewarding, and being able to see people develop and kind of grow in confidence, and absolutely love it. And getting to work with these people. We do look a bit like a terrible 90s boy band and their mum. But we're modelling Moneysupermarket's new line of merch. We are a slightly more diverse bunch now as well. We have more women in the squad. And I feel really, really lucky that I get to work with them. They probably hate that I show this picture whenever I do versions of this talk, but it makes me laugh. So, they're such a talented bunch of people, as are the people that we have in the wider EM collective now in Manchester and in London. I just feel really privileged to work with them every day, as well as the people I support. And it's thanks to them that I think, that my confidence has grown in doing this role. So I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking of looking at an engineering manager role, if you've not considered it before, it could be, a possible future career move if you're interested in supporting people and teams and helping them develop, and still being able to use the technical skills to work with the team to help them deliver. I think there's loads of value that we can add to the role. So, thank you.